All right. Hello, everybody. As people are filing in, I'm going to give everyone a minute. I'll just kind of vamp and we wait a minute or two here. For those of you who are just joining, my name is Adam Sockel. I'm the head of content and I do brand here at Orum. I am very excited to be joined by Kelly. Is it Lichtenberger? I should have asked you. I've talked to you.
Yes, that's
Okay.
great. Oh my goodness, you
I
nailed
took a
it.
sh I took a shot, but I've talked to you several times and never asked. So Kelly Lichtenberger, who is the author of Prospect Like a Girl, and Kelly, I'm gonna also let you introduce yourself more extensively in just a moment here. But we are kicking off Orum's Sell Yes Summer Book Series by talking about Kelly's new book, Prospect Like a Girl, which I'm extremely excited about. So thank you everyone for joining. The chat should be open if you guys have questions as we go. But before we dive into the book, Kelly, can you give some background about your career and hi Bob and all that good stuff so people have a little bit of context for why we're
Would
talking?
love to. So first, I want to say thank you so much for having me as part of your summer series. I'm super excited. I love working with Orem, and I was just so honored to be asked. My career, I started my career as an SDR. And I stayed within sales development where others started wanting their careers to go into field sales and to continue that path. I will date myself now. I started my career when we didn't even have, www. There were no emails yet. So I was using notes and paper, and I started as soon as we were introduced to this new technology. I quickly realized that the price of different applications and software were going to drop. And we were going to be able to do a lot more things internally.
Mhm.
So I stayed, I started managing teams. I had my own outsourcing company. And once I sold that, I did additional consulting. And then I've had the great opportunity to go back into a few companies that I absolutely loved that I got the opportunity to work for, one of those being now at Hi Bob. So I've been here just a bit over a year and excited to be here and growing this global team that we have here.
Amazing. Absolutely love it. And I should say very briefly for people who are joining, leave a comment in the chat, so I can make sure that it's working, but let us know where you are kind of tuning in from. I am in very humid Cleveland, Ohio here. Kelly's in New York City at the moment. We are sweltering just a little bit. We are going to do some giveaways, a few copies of Kelly's book as well, which I will send to some random registrants after the fact. Also, a peek behind the curtain for me before we dive into the chat. I used to work for a company called Overdrive. They have a very popular ebook and audiobook app called Libby, and part of my job was hosting a very popular podcast where I interviewed authors. And so getting to interview authors, I am very excited about. So yeah, I am very pumped for everybody to be here and to kind of nerd out on a little bit of bookish and bookish talk. And also, thank you to the anonymous attendee who told me that for some reason chat was disabled. You should be good to go now. So, I appreciate the heads up there. So it should be good. If not, please someone let me know. But we're gonna dive right in. So first things first, Kelly, what inspired you to write Prospect Like a Girl?
So it's been something that had been on my mind for years. It's one of those things that I would start to think about and get some things on paper, and then life would take over, and I would go, well, I'm doing this now, so I'll just keep going over
Hmm.
here. And then I'd write down more. And then sooner or later, I have lots of folders with info and haven't really. Put everything together, and just every year when you reevaluate your life as you go into a new year, I go, I'm going to write that book. I kept thinking about it and kept thinking about it. And really and truly, the last chapter of the book talks about my mom and what an inspiration she was to me. And she ended up, unfortunately, passing away at the young age of 54. And as that was approaching, and I got into my 50s, I said, well, now is the time. I
Hmm.
have said it. I need to do this. I have always said I was going to. So finish it. Just do the dang thing. And that's what I did. I got busy, and it took me about 2 years, and I got it completed. And the goal was to do it before I was 54, and I was able to do that. So hit that goal.
Super quick from a nerdy writing
Yeah.
standpoint. As a person with like a literary background and someone I have a manuscript that I'm gonna self-publish. Um, Did you write like every morning, every evening? Just like really quickly on your process. What
Oh
was your
yeah.
process to get the words on the page?
So I became obsessed. Like a lot of things, I'm one of those that once I say I'm going to do it, I am going to do it. I'm going to hit
Hmm.
that goal. And that's part of, I think, the sales piece of me. I started writing every single spare second. So every day I had to write, I promised myself an hour. So I would put aside an hour. I can do this. So at some point, and then it would be, okay, I've got extra time here at the end of the day. And then all of a sudden it was like midnight. And I'm like, what are you doing? You gotta like put it down. And then weekends. And then we have so many different family things that we were at. And I'm in the background in a picture, like just typing away, thinking of stuff. Like it became quite the obsession. So it was a lot. Because then once you get the words on the paper, then all of a sudden a few chapters down, you're like, let me go back to that one.
Hmm.
And you keep going back and forth. So it's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, it is very much so. And that was something I'm always like, I would always ask people about the process because once you start writing, it's easy to keep writing, but starting writing is always very tough and finding
You
that
have
time.
to
So it's,
commit, and you also have to just you have to be really start being firm with you're not going to keep going back and repurposing everything, or you just
mhm.
stay in the spin cycle. So those
Yeah.
are some hints.
Yeah. So a key component to Prospect Like a Girl is this framework that you've built out, this XEIT. Can you break that down and talk about how it applies like emotionally intelligent strategies for selling?
Sure. So I think one of the things when I started writing this, one of the reasons that just to let everybody know, so it's not just for girls, the prospect like a girl came from the fact when I was doing a bunch of studies and really building out my different teams and trying to grow sales organizations. Why was it all of a sudden that there were less women that were applying, but the
Hmm.
women that I had were doing phenomenal? So I started doing a lot of research, and actually, women it's like 78% better at the closing, and it's not for anything else. This is not to say somebody's not good or bad.
Hmm.
Just what happens is, and we're going to talk about some of this, I think today, but imposter syndrome and really doubting themselves because they don't have a firm belief in their success, a lot of times they're innately just starting to ask more questions and
Hmm.
engage with people more to get more information and really learn. That emotional intelligence then drives the connection, the human connection, which then a lot of time leads to trust, and that's where the sales takes place. So I dug into that. And so that's why Prospect Like a Girl, and it was finding your emotional intelligence and really in a world of AI.
Hmm.
How do we stay true to the human aspect of who we are and not lose sight with all of the talk of AI and where things are going?
Yeah.
So I think it's super important. And then to build out from that, what I ended up building is I took a bunch of different methodologies that I had always been working on. And what really resonated when I got down to it was X for, I had started with, you have your, X factor, but what is that? That's really X-raying, going beyond. It's not staying at the surface. What's below it? How do you really get to pain and really understand it? Because nobody's sitting around with just money on their desk, like, thank gosh you called. I didn't know what to do with this stack of cash.
I was
Um,
just waiting for this.
yeah, perfect timing. So X-ray, get below, and then really elevate the conversation. Again, how to keep it at a human level and not have be so scripted that people lose sight of the conversation. They just want to hit the bullets, and then keep going down their list that they're told to do. And then ignite rapport. I think it's really important to be interested, not interesting. So letting the other person communicate, tell you, learn from them, be actually interested in who they are. And then just tailor your approach, not for your company pitch, but for what the conversation is with the person that you're having. So that's what it is. It's really just, it's more being human. And those are the letters just to remind you.
Yeah, I be interested, not interesting is so powerful, and it's I the version I always say, whether it's on LinkedIn or elsewhere, is it's like I don't care what your platform can do. I care what your platform can do for me. Like I'm interested in it in terms of how it will serve my company. And I do think like emotional, and when people initially see emotional intelligence in terms of sales, they may initially roll their eyes, which is why I'm so happy that A, you wrote this book, and B, you're talking about it and putting it out in the world because you position emotional intelligence above artificial intelligence. And but I want to talk about like how can salespeople like marry tech efficiency with that emotional connection because it is so pivotal to be able to use both. But I want to hear like how are you focusing your teams on marrying the two together?
You bet. So I think you have to strike a balance between automation and authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And, you do this with the different tools. So that connection, the reason why I love Orum, I'm going to get more shots at bat with getting the human connection. And I think where people, I see a lot of people when they're starting their careers as in sales development, when I think about a phone, my iPhone, really even I have an Apple, but they'll even tell you that it's not a phone. It's all about the apps. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
people have grown up with is using it as an app, a text tool, but really never. If I ask a lot of times people that are new to their career about voicemail, they're like, voicemail. I would just text and say they didn't pick up. So even just that part, like how do I leave a voice message that people are going to call me back? So you really want to find tools that are going to get you those more at bats, and then really be able to leverage the human aspect. And there's so many different things with Orum that you can do with practicing that now, with some, coaching, scorecards, role playing, and really tap into what's working for me. And I love that because my reps, I don't have to put them all under the same umbrella. I can meet them where they are too and where they're having success and then where I can work with them. But it's really watching the points that you're having leverage and then maybe where you're needing some help.
Yeah. And I want to let everyone know I didn't ask for the Orem shout outs. I
That's
appreciate it,
that
Kelly.
that literally is me.
But to that point, something I do want to point out is, yes, I say I love the fact that the company I work for enables sellers to have more at bats and ultimately more conversations. But I would love to drill down a little bit as you as a sales leader, and I'm sorry I didn't prep you
Yeah.
this question, but like, how do you as a sales leader ensure that your reps are focusing on emotional intelligence? Because you could use Orem and you could be calling into a persona with a huge connect rate, and you could have 100 conversations a day, but if you don't have them, if you're not coached on emotional intelligence, you could strike out 100 times and like, it doesn't really matter how many at bats we're giving you. So how do you focus on like in this environment that's flooded with opportunity and automation? How do you ensure your team is leading with emotional intelligence?
So, we don't want to resist automation. That's number one. I mean, that's going to be there. But the motion that I like to work with my team on is again, coach for empathy, not for objection handling.
Hmm.
So how do we do that? So really it's getting into I'll look at numbers and see maybe some really high activity from certain reps and then lower results. And then at that point, I know that they must be because they're trying to do the right things. So what are they saying? Then it's, really listening to the calls. And a lot of times what you get down to is they're trying to get to that end result. Let me get that meeting scheduled. And so many times they've missed so much of the conversation. And they wanted to do those things that we say, oh, don't do that. Start talking about the company personally and professionally. If the pain's not great enough, you're not doing anything. So if you just jump out of the gate and you start talking to me about something that I have no idea what you're talking to me about or what it's going to do to help me, I've already shut you off. So I think it's really important to start being different. And how do you get to be a little different? Really be interested again, like we were just talking about, in who you're calling. Learn from them, ask for help. Nobody wants to say no when you're asking them for help. Tell them, I'm hoping that you can help me. I mean, it's so simple. It's one of the simplest lines, and people a lot of times think that that shows weakness or like you don't know what you're doing when you're calling in. But I'd rather not. Where do I go? What do I do? Can you help me? Is this something that you would even want to look at an email? I don't want to fill up your email box either. How can I help you?
Yeah, I love that. And this kind of goes into what our next topic was going to be is kind of about like confidence. And I have a question here about imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
but
of
we got
course.
a question in our Q&A that is
Yeah,
almost beat for beat my question. So I'm just going to use
yeah.
Calvin's version of it. So Calvin, thank you for writing in this question. This is really good. Calvin says, you mentioned imposter syndrome, which I believe most sellers go through at some point in time. It's not just sellers. I'm a marketer. I have imposter syndrome all the time. But what is the most important piece of advice you have for someone who is feeling like they don't belong or aren't good enough?
Gosh, yeah, it's at some point I think we all do face it, but at the end of the day, if you realize like people just we're putting more focus on us. So there's a skill set that you have that brought you to where you are. What's the worst thing that can happen? On the phone, they hang up on me. Okay. So I'll even take it back to this. Before I started as an SDR, I started selling door to door. I sold encyclopedias door to door. And there they would actually answer the door and they could slam it on, my face. And that
Yeah.
happened quite a bit. And so I actually started with that because I wanted to face my fear of
Hmm.
objections, rejection. And I thought, well, door to door sales will do it. These days, you would never do it. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? I don't even answer my door. But I think it's really important to know the role that you're in providing value, believe in your company, believe in what you're doing. And again, if you take your product and you've got a goal and you have to sell out of this and you are really going to try and help someone, it's a different ballgame because you don't have to worry. There's no rejection in that. Well, they could say that they're not interested or want to hang up, and that's fine. But again, that might help you change how you approach somebody. Um, but you're there for a reason. And you really need to just know that the person on the other side, at some point, they have to do something to improve their role, their job. Everybody's in it to keep their job, to keep their role. So then, how do you tailor what you're doing to help them do those things? So we're all kind of going through it.
Yeah, I would add, and I can't take credit for this. My wife says this all the time, and it really fits very, very well with cold calling, actually. She always says, if you do nothing, you're already at no. And so I think about that from an imposter syndrome standpoint all the time. I was just telling Kelly before we were talking about this before we started recording. My wife just started her own business, and at first she was nervous. She has imposter syndrome because she's like, what? I don't know. She's a florist now. And she's like, I don't know what I'm doing. But she keeps saying, she's like, yeah, but if I don't do it, it's the same as failure. It's the same as having done nothing. And so it's just like it's this thing where we say it all the time. It's like, if you don't pick up the phone and try to cold call, if you don't try to have those conversations, you're already at no. And that's the worst thing anyone can tell you. And so from an imposter syndrome standpoint, I like champion that to our team all the
Yeah.
time. It's just like, the worst thing that they're going to tell you is the thing that you're basically telling yourself if you don't try. So that's where I come from.
As you get older, so again, I'll drop my age in there, being older. The older you get to, you realize nobody really knows what the heck they're doing. Do we
Yeah.
even know what we really want to do with our careers? Do we like everybody's the same? And I've talked to some really high-end executives through investment companies, and I've had the privilege of meeting some really smart people. And when I sit down and ask these questions of them, they didn't know. They had no idea either when they were starting their first business or they were going out trying to get their first funds. None of it. They were facing the exact same thing. And at the end of the day, when you realize that nobody really knows what's going on here, you just give
Hmm.
it your best shot, kind of takes that off the table. And every time I have, parts of the book talking about failing forward, I think it was like, I don't know, it was over 1,000 different um, uh, things that Edison did for invention before he got to
Mm.
the light bulb. It's crazy. It was like at the 1,018th invention or something. Like it's so nutty, like nobody knows what we're doing. And
Hmm.
we have to laugh through it and you have to get to that failure because that's where you're going to learn. And then on the no thing that you were saying, even in sales, I talk about this with my team. Yes is obviously the most amazing thing you can hear from somebody. But you know what? No is the second best. The worst answer is actually maybe,
Hmm.
because then you don't know where you stand, and that's where they put you in the gray zone. And so Yes and no, bring it on all day. I know exactly where I stand.
Yeah, I interviewed an SDR at Chili Piper, and she said the same thing. She's like, if you tell me yes that you want to book a meeting, amazing. If you tell me no that you want to book a meeting, amazing. I don't have to bother you anymore, and you don't have to string me along. So I love that.
Correct.
That's fantastic. I wanna shift a little bit back into the book and talk about prospecting techniques. So for
Yes.
you, what metrics or signs do you look for to know that a prospect is quote unquote like ideal? Understanding that it's going to be slightly different for every company and ICP and everything.
Sure. And I think, we all have our ICP and we all have the titles. But again, we have to be cautious because that can also block us out if we get too rigid with that. So I try to at least I want to have a path to get to who I believe will be the best titles and things like that. I want to know that in my mind for my blueprint. But what happens a lot of times is people want to start at the bottom and then go up. I start at the absolute top. So the C levels and of the organizations that I want to get to. Because a lot of times what ends up happening is once you get there, it's not necessarily going to be them. There's going to
Hmm.
be some kind of gatekeeper maybe that I have to speak with or a path I have to take there. But when I let them know what I'm going after or what I'm trying to do or how is there somebody in so and so's organization that would be better to speak to about X, Y, or Z? When they tell me, now when I go to that next person, I'm saying the C level said we should talk, that office. So that actually helps open doors. And when I'm leaving voicemails and things like that saying so and so's office said we should speak, a lot, and I'm not making that up. Then they're like, well, did so and so say? Well, no, their office did. When I called, they said but it helps really open those doors. So don't be so confined to the person or think if you start at the bottom and then you work your way up. I like to go right up there. And then if you start really watching times a day that you call, you might actually, because people are not always in the office, you might get to them directly. But I'm going to take my shot right at the top and see what they're, doing within their organization.
I love that. And actually, I didn't even tell you this yet. Bonus for everyone listening in. I'm currently building out a persona report for Orum, looking at basically like pickup rates and booked meeting rates by persona. So think like engineering versus finance versus sales versus marketing, but then looking at seniority in each of those. And what I'm seeing in just about every persona, it is wild. C-suite level of every single persona is almost across the board the most likely to pick up your call. And for whatever reason, I don't want to categorize every C-suite person as like, oh, they're just waiting for someone to call because no one does call them. But to your point, it carries more weight if you have a conversation with them and you can build that like above the line champion who is the most above the line, where it's like, internally I report directly to our CEO and he likes to joke like, hey, how can I unblock something for you? Because it'll come with a little bit of weight if he's like, I need this thing for Adam. And it's true the same thing with cold calling. If you can get someone in the C-suite on the phone and say, hey, this is why I'm calling, and then they're like, great, talk to Kelly and tell them that I said to talk to them,
Yeah,
it carries that weight.
absolutely. And again, it builds that trust level in, and then by the time, you're ready to go back and hopefully get the deal done, they already have been introduced. So
Mhm.
hopefully it shrinks the sales cycle.
Yeah.
So it's important.
Yeah, along those lines, we got an anonymous question that I really love that aligns perfectly with this. I talked to my SDRs about the psychology behind calling. Tonality and how things are said can make all the difference when making a successful call. What made you start incorporating that into your approach as an SDR and your management techniques? Putting you on the spot here.
Yeah. So we have a thing that we do when we talk about, so we say, how's everybody doing today? And everybody, when we'll do like a team meeting, and outstanding, we get all excited. And everybody says outstanding. And the reason why is I have always believed that mirror image. So again, as corny as it sounds, if you have that mirror in front of you, that's gonna come across on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're feeling good, if you're ready to go, that makes a difference. And then tonality, it's really watching your inflections and when you're talking to somebody, when you're, bringing things up. And it's important when you're asking for help or asking questions is to keep everything on the high versus as soon as somebody's voice goes down and you sound like you're weak, I'm not sure if I should be asking this, and then you lose them. So how
Hmm.
do we, when we practice that a lot, so we do that a lot in cold calling, but it's really important to start off with everybody on that high of just, and so it's become a joke. We know it's corny, but really it's just that. We tell people if you just had a bad call and you need to think about it for a minute, go walk around because that
Hmm.
negativity on the next call, it will be picked up. And you don't want to lose that one shot you get at the next call.
Yeah, I would say, and this isn't an Orum pitch. There are other platforms that have this, but we have a virtual sales floor where people can call together. And I do think that feeling of being less isolated when if you're in the virtual sales floor and people are kind of listening into your calls and they hear you get rejected pretty harshly and you get off the phone and like everyone can kind of commiserate with you and like that type of thing too. I do think it helps with tonality onto the next call to hear like have other people be like, "Oh man, that was rough." Like as opposed to being in like your room by yourself, your office by yourself and you're just it can feel very spirally. So I will say like if you are virtual using a platform like Warm to call together or if you're in office calling together also does help with that tonality because like you hear other people and you get that like you said it's a little maybe it's cheesy maybe it's corny but like you get that like good vibe of everyone kind of being in it together which I really
Absolutely.
like.
And then I think there's also something to say to back away a little bit. Like, so we get excited
Hmm.
and that's great. Maybe you're coming off of a great call. But if you get on with somebody whose energy is a little bit different too, you have to watch and meet them where they are because you don't want to
Hmm.
come across like, oh, yay. And they're like, wait a minute.
Rah
This
rah,
is
yeah.
what's happening. So you have to play with that as well.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just saw a note uh, about call blitzes. Absolutely. So call blitzes are amazing. We do that. We have, Slack channels that we're building people up when you're getting into it. And I think that's huge. Again, it's the excitement level. This is a really, really hard job.
Hmm.
And you can get beaten down pretty quickly. So staying excited, and again, it's like manifest your day. When everybody's excited, you're seeing the wins, you want to
Hmm.
get into it even more, and then people put more energy into it.
Yeah, listen, I have a baseball background. I played baseball in college, and they always talk about for professional baseball players, if you fail as a hitter 7 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. And it's like sales is the same thing. Like you do have to think about like success looks different from a sales standpoint, but it is still hard to kind of get that beaten down. And so I'm curious, what advice do you give leaders aiming to build like a human-centric, emotionally intelligent sales culture that does involve that like needing to lift people up. Like I'm curious how
I
you
think
tell other
everything that we
leaders.
do, things are so different now. I think one of the really the most important parts about managing today is knowing it's not cookie cutter.
Hmm.
And though we have KPIs and though you have goals, there's just so many different things happening in people's lives. And we're in the office sometimes. My office, it's hybrid, so 3 days a week. Some are fully remote. You really have to get to know who you're working with to really understand what they may be going through. And being in a sales environment, it's sometimes really difficult to say when you're struggling or you're not hitting the goals or you see everybody else hitting their numbers and metrics. And here we are at the end of a quarter and like, how am I going to get there? And
Hmm.
so, really, what's going on? Where can we learn? Getting people to feel comfortable in their own skin to say, I need help here. Getting people, raise their hand first, getting people to really want to do. You just mentioned something that I love, which is the sales floor because it opens up a way for people to again be more real with each other. Like that was the worst call. I just really was awful, or that was great. What did I do? And getting people to celebrate their own successes, but learn and feel comfortable when they need to get some additional help. I think that's super important. So that's how you build it. I think having the whole team really understanding like what it looks like it's no longer somebody's not good if they're not hitting their goals. Maybe there's
Hmm.
something else going on that we need to work with them. So being human with our teams too.
I love this. Also, shout out to everybody listening. Like, you guys are sending in really great questions. I love these. Two things. One, somebody asked in our questions, I don't know if everyone else can see. So, someone asked about the future of cold calling since this is an Orum conversation. I'm gonna put in the chat this. Sorry to like promote a webinar on a webinar, but I'm assuming what you're asking about is the iOS 26 news and call screening. And just for sake of brevity, I put a link in there on Friday. Our head of product and our found one of our founding sellers is doing a webinar. I'll be there too, so you'll see my face again. But if you want to register, that's in the chat. Just wanted to answer that. I didn't want to disregard it. But somebody asked about, in talking about hyping up your team and hyping up your sellers and your leaders, they asked, how do you keep a very repetitive job from feeling that way to a team? You want to keep them motivated without feeling like a broken record. I love this question because it is really easy as like a marketer to say like, yeah, just go in and hype up your team all the time. But if you say it all the time, people are gonna be like, oh my God, can you please just shut up? So how do you keep from sounding like a broken record and keeping people
Yeah.
motivated?
So it's again, it's the one of the most difficult positions that there is. So it's this for me is you have to have things that goals that are can be accomplished because you have to feel the success. I do love a spiff. I do love having some fun, but they have to be spiffs and things that um people are interested in. So
Hmm.
that's the other thing. It's no longer that I just put up one type of here's what we're going to do. I ask people what actually motivates them. Some it may be having a day to go do things in the community. Others it might
Hmm.
be a nice dinner. Somebody might want a half a day. Whatever it is, you have to also look at that. And then, again, celebrate the wins. It's not just going to be all sunshine and some rainbows though. I mean, so sometimes it's really again with your team taking that break to say where are we struggling, what can we do, but know that a new spiff isn't going to always do it. So some may want training, some more professional training to help with their career. So also looking at paths. So I think it's important for people to understand what how important this role is to every other role in the organization. So I say it all the time, even if somebody wants to go to marketing, there's still sales aspects of marketing. There's other, CS. What can we do to have them understand once they really understand what makes them successful at this role? How will it then be able to be used in other roles within the company? And how can we use that and grow their skill set to be able to have these within the company?
I love that. And I will say, like, Orem is a sales platform sold by sellers and it's founded by sales professionals. Our CEO was an SDR leader before he founded this company. We live and breathe sales, and we say everyone is in sales. So like I said, I'm in marketing, but when I go to an event, the way that we think about it is like, I am very much a front line of the brand. I also do all of our social. And if you've ever interacted with Orem on any public platform, it's been me. Hello. But with that in mind, like if I have a wildly different, like unemotionally intelligent, like if I have a complete lack of emotional intelligence when I'm communicating with someone, whether it's at an event or as Orem on LinkedIn or whatever it might be, and then they have a conversation with an account executive who is very emotionally intelligent, they're going to be like, wow, that's kind of whiplashy. And so everyone does have to understand that, like, it's important to, like you said, be interested, not interesting. No one wants to be talked at, they want to have
Mhm.
their voice heard. And so I do think it's really important, like you said, no matter where people go, whether they start as an SDR and go into CS or vice versa, like I would love to, I didn't prep you this ahead of time. Sorry, I'm all over the map because I'm excited.
Yeah.
How do you as a leader ensure that you have that like emotional intelligence remains top of mind for every customer or prospect facing team? Like, how do you keep everyone aligned?
Well, you have to work on it. It's sometimes not there. It's easy when, if you get the end user prospect upset and you are having a struggle during the day or you're not at your numbers and you're all of a sudden you want to react. And so those are the learning moments. It's a growth thing. I think, just like your IQ. you can start someplace and end up someplace else, you know?
Hmm.
And I think it has to be practiced. I mean, we all, again, will have days that we go, well, didn't do so well on that call because,
Hmm.
you know, you could talk going back to tonality, like, how did I respond to that? Probably should have asked another question instead of just, again, going deeper into what we do versus somebody else doesn't.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's just, it's working as those are the conversations again versus just looking at, oh, here's how you handle an objection.
Hmm.
Really more towards the whole call. How are they working multiple calls? Again, it's not just a one size fits all. One call determines your skill set. You know, it's looking
Hmm.
at a bunch of things.
Love it. Got another really great question. I'll get back to my own questions in a minute, but I'm loving the ones you guys are rolling in here. Kelly, what are your thoughts on managers making calls alongside their SDRs, and if you feel it's beneficial for them to have that as a support system?
I love it. I will still pick up the phone. And because what that does is show to especially people that are new to their career that you're in it. You know how to do this. You're
Hmm.
not just telling them, go do this, and then you don't understand. It's so nice when you know somebody understands what it feels like in that position. Because then it's real. I've been hung up on. I had the door slammed. I had, it's not just say, oh, well, I've been through it too. No, but to really understand, like, I had a good call. I had a bad call. I still have them.
Hmm.
And I want to share that. So, you know, I try to live and breathe and be present in what they're going through. So again, it's not just, oh, obviously you don't know what you're doing on the phone, you know, this week. Working with them on how do we get, you know, better as a team. I think it's good. I don't think they have to do every call next to them, but to show that they know how to do the role.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. Got somebody said that can be a great spiff. Whoever has the most dials, most conversations, or most sets gets the appointment. The leader sets. We actually do that internally as well. Our SDR leader will rip some dials, and if she books meetings, whoever has like the most
Awesome.
conversations gets hers. Yeah, that's great. I
I
love that.
love it.
There's also another question from an anonymous attendee. When results don't match up with our goals and your manager and teammates feel lost in how to change things, from a cold calling appointment setting perspective, how do you decide where to look for things to change slash pivot to drive better results? I'm going to answer
Yeah.
first just because
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little bit of an Orum commercial here. I will say if you're using Orum or a platform like Orum, there's analytics, and some of the stuff that we show you is like objection handling, and we walk you through basically like how are you on the call. We sort of analyze it and say like this is how your opener is going. This is, you're failing 50% of the time when people say it's we don't have any budget. So that's what you should work on. We also just recently released AI scorecards that literally scores your entire call and will give you a score out of 5, and it'll basically say like your opener is great, your objection handling is great, you need to work on your close, you got a 2 out of 5, whatever it is. So I will say like my answer to how do you decide where to look for things to change, pivot. If you have a platform like Orum, look at the analytics. That's always something you can work on. We also have AI role plays that you can practice with. But Kelly, where do you tell your team where to look for places they can change?
Yeah. So the scorecard has been amazing because so I when people see that they don't have a perfect score, all of a sudden they're, wait a minute, what that I got the meeting. Why is this not a 5? So they go right back to it on their own, which is great. So that's part of it too, versus just a manager saying, here's what you need to work on. Like, let's have them, you know, tell each other. We do a lot of things at Hi Bob with AI. So as much as I talk about emotional intelligence, again, I feel like you have to marry the EI and the AI together. It's just
Hmm.
never forget in the AI that you have to have that human connection. The same reason I'll just go back to that last question. I know the different things changing with phone, but if we think about the world of even go back to Blockbuster Video. Blockbuster Video, when they
Yes.
closed because they did not take the deal from Netflix, movies did not go away.
Hmm.
The whole idea of movies at home still existed, still does. It was elevated. And it was elevated to streaming at home and how you took in, you know, movies and things like that. The convenience, still here today. went nowhere. So it's about elevating what we're currently doing, making sure too who we're going after when we're talking about the ICPs and our messaging. What is it that we're looking to get from the end of a call or this list that I'm calling into? Or is it this product? Is it, maybe meetings? Maybe it's just getting them to an event. Whatever it is, how am I going to elevate what I'm doing to connect with, whatever prospect I'm calling? But then also making sure that I'm using my different tools. If I don't have a tool that can help me, I just build it now. Big
Mhm.
thing. We'll go in and build our own GPTs. It's such a big part of who we are. We now have GPTs that we've built out that we can put in weekly, our score, our results that we've had, and here's our KPIs. What could I do to be better? So I would highly recommend anybody who hasn't embraced yet the full understanding of different AI tools out there, get to it because it can save you a lot of time. If it's taking you hours to figure out what you're not doing, have somebody help you. You should not be. This should be quick fixes now, and you should be able to get to your prospects a lot quicker.
So with that in mind, how do you think all these advances in AI will redefine like the human aspect of selling moving forward?
Yeah, so people are going to demand more. So if you're going to call me, just know a little bit more about me. I'll say right down to interviewing people today. If they haven't gone, they should at least have a few things they can pull out right away about me and why they want to talk to not only my company, but why they would want to work for me. If they can't do that quickly, that's a red flag. All of that's available now. So it's elevating what you're going in after. And again, that's what I'm saying. If you can, as a seller, find things that actually excite you, that you do want to learn about within your industry, lead with that. Get them engaged by wanting to learn from the person that you're speaking to. If you're calling C levels of these large companies on certain things, good for you if you get them. Get knowledge from them, learn from them. It will only help you in your career. That's such a great thing to be able to do. I also think when people, I love when people say the phone call is dead, and I hope they keep doing it because then I'll get through. Yay. It's a skill set. People don't have it. People aren't learning it. People are now diving further and further into the email abyss, and I am over it. Like delete, 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 delete. I'm more likely to pick up the phone. I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that say they won't. I absolutely will.
That's my favorite Kellyism is hoping everyone else keeps saying cold calling is dead because then Kelly's calls are gonna get through. I've heard you say that a few times. It's my favorite thing you say. It's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
good.
Please.
I'm gonna ask an impossible question, but I did prep you on it, so I know. But where do you see the role of sales evolving over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of like empathy and authentic connections? Understanding that 5 to 10 years is an entire lifetime right now with how fast things are changing.
Yeah, again, I think wow, the way at the rate AI is going, it's really thinking about, again, how not to be robotic, how to meet people with all of the noise of AI. How do you silence that? And again, the only thing is that human connection and really understanding who you're talking to and what's important to them. We will no longer have time for this lengthy process. I'm going to want to know my information, be able to move on. And again, it's about the person, it's going to be their role. They're going to have to
Mhm.
get there quick. They're going to have to make sure they're staying elevated to be able to keep their roles and not have it taken over by some kind of AI. Again, so offering them what's going to make them successful, and really understanding then at the human level what they need personally. Take the business out of it. Again, the individual, what is most important to them.
Yeah, I love that. All right, we're just about at time, so I want to ask you two last questions. One comes from our chat, and then one is from me. For someone who is new to your XEIT methodology, what would you say is the single most important habit to start building today? And conversely, what's the most common mistake or misconception you see when people try to adopt it? It's a great
Yeah.
question.
So again, I think that people scripts for me are comfort. We want to know, okay, if I'm calling a certain title within a certain industry, these could be 3 to 5 things that are of interest to this title. to this industry now, and you can get that really quick. But then how do you ask questions and engage them to be able to take the script aside and listen to a human being? Doesn't matter. You don't know where it's going to go, and that's okay. Most people stay confined to, they feel uncomfortable as soon as it goes off, quote unquote, script. But you really need to be comfortable to let it go. That's where you're going to win. That's where you're going to learn, be most engaged. You're going to listen more. Where people make the most mistakes is again, they follow letters. So they want to go to, okay, I asked questions. Now I've x-rayed it. And now I want to go to, I'm going to elevate it. And then again, people start losing the actual being in the moment and being present in the conversation. So letting those guide you. So I usually put things up and around my computer, so
Hmm.
people can have some questions that can guide me to get me back in if I get lost for a minute, that have the helping aspect, but then aren't going into product knowledge. So leaving that out until it's absolutely necessary.
I
I you
love
know
it.
pain, personal life, professional life, again, the biggest thing is if the pain's not great enough, nobody's buying. So if you think about your personal life and you think about the fact that, okay, maybe I travel a lot and I didn't want to pay for having somebody to mow my lawn, but then all of a sudden I'm away so much, and then HOA is like knocking on my door, like, you got to mow, you got to mow, or you're going to start getting fined. Okay, now the paint's great enough. I don't want to pay for that, so I'll go pay for somebody to mow the lawn. Again, how do we then call in and get them to the place where, well, this is going to happen if we don't do this now? But again, not being all about product, really asking them those questions.
I love it. Okay, last question for you. Are you working on a follow-up or a next book? And as someone who has, I always ask authors this too, and it's like the worst question. It's like, now that you've done this huge thing, are you doing another huge thing? So Kelly, tell us what's next.
Not right now. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
I'm taking a break from it was a lot and I love it, and
Hmm.
I'm still learning different areas that I would have improved upon. When we talk about imposter syndrome, this, even talking that about a book that I wrote, still sometimes gets me because who am I to write a book and be out there. So the same things happen to me. So I'm still trying to absorb and see the areas that then I would build upon this. So maybe someday, but right now I'm happy with this one.
I love it. Everybody, I put a link into to Kelly's prospectlikeagirl.com in the chat. You can also just look up both of our names on LinkedIn. I want to thank everybody. These questions were amazing. I really appreciate how engaged everyone was. I will send a follow-up email to everyone with this recording so you can share it with your teams and your friends and your family and whoever else. But most importantly, Kelly, thank you so much for your time today. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And everybody listening, I hope if you do read the book, if you get one or two things out of it, that's great. Let me know. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for having me kick off the summer series.
Yeah. And the last thing I will say, because it matters to authors, if you get the book, leave Kelly a 5-star review wherever you get it. I cannot stress enough how important that is for authors. Okay, that's my last bit of book advice. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will talk very soon.